AM and Express 106.5 FM.
NBC News Radio, I'm Chris Coraggio. Talks aimed at ending a United Auto Workers strike are underway for a second straight day with no breakthroughs reported. Appearing on MSNBC, UAW President Shawn Fain said that progress has been slow as the two sides continue to meet. Nearly 13,000 auto workers remain on strike, demanding better pay and pension benefits. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says President Biden will get what he wants if members of the GOP caucus remove him from the speakership.
That if you did a motion to vacate, you would have to, a handful of Republicans, work with Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, to remove the speaker. And it would be exactly what the president wants.
During an interview on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures, the California Republican said ousting him would shut down the House and stop the impeachment inquiry against President Biden. McCarthy also brought up what it took for him to secure the speaker's gavel in January. He was elected after a historic 15th ballot. McCarthy's comments come after Florida Republican Matt Gaetz vowed to bring forward a motion to remove the speaker unless he meets conservative demands on spending cuts and policy reforms. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Deputy Ryan Klinkenbrummer was killed in an ambush-style attack Saturday night near the Palmdale Sheriff's Station. Sheriff Robert Luna says they're searching for answers.
But he was just driving down the street, and for no apparent reason, and we're still looking into the specific reasons, somebody decided to shoot and murder him. I'm assuming at this point because he was in uniform. That to me is sickening.
Police are still looking for the suspect responsible for the attack, and a $250,000 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest. Authorities in Florida say they've arrested a 14-year-old boy after finding his mother shot to death in their home. Sheriff Chad Chronister says that the teen also shot and wounded a man during an argument yesterday. Deputies reported finding the teen wandering his neighborhood with a handgun, threatening to take his own life. I'm Chris Coraggio, NBC News Radio.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Well, midnight, the auto workers went on strike. Three plants, a very targeted strike. A plant in Michigan, a plant in Ohio, and a plant in Missouri. And look, Ford and GM have already announced that there will be layoffs, and this is the reason you do a targeted strike in this way. You go after the main plants, and then they end up laying off other people so that they don't have to be on strike, so they can collect unemployment. Makes it a little easier for folks to get through this. And look, nobody wants this. Nobody. Well, none of the workers want this. Evidently, the big three have decided that this is where they're going to dig in. And as Shawn Fain, the UAW president, said, this is our generation's defining moment. The money, he says, is there. The cause is righteous, he says, and the world is watching. And he said the UAW is ready to stand up, and this is what's happened. And this is one of those moments where, as a country, we can make the choice. And I got to tell you, I applaud Joe Biden for taking the position he's taken. But this is a moment where, as a country, we can influence this. There was talk by Stellantis of moving plants. We talked yesterday about Jim Cramer and his spiel about, if I were in charge of all that, I would just move everything to Mexico and screw all those working people. This is a moment for all of us all of us people who buy cars, all of those people who are the customers, supposedly the ones who they care so much about. This is where we have to weigh in on this. And we have to stand behind these some 150,000 workers who are fighting for dignity, who are fighting for respect, and fighting to change. And look, this is much bigger than just one industry having a labor struggle. This is about changing the course of work in this country. This is about taking on the status quo of the billionaires getting everything they could possibly want and working people getting the short end of the stick. Now, look, I woke up this morning and I started reading the Foxes and the CNNs, and everyone's got their hot take headline. And CNN, the reason nobody pays attention to CNN anymore. And look, I expected Fox to be very slanted. I expect the right-wing media to be very slanted against the workers and the UAW. But CNN Politics tweeted out one of their stories, and they wrote, President Joe Biden was dealt an economic and political blow Friday as the United Auto Workers went on strike, a development the White House worked to avoid and now places the president in a bind. I'm going, what? You mean the bind? What bind? That he's going to be pro-worker? That he's going to side with collective bargaining rights? I'm confused. What's the bind? I guess the outcome in this is going to be Joe Biden supports working families. See, now that would be a much better. I would be much happier with that headline. And this is the thing. This is the thing that gets me, because the reality in this country is the corporate control of our media is far and wide. You've got 6 corporations who control virtually everything we see, hear, and read. And is it any surprise that this is how they frame it? This is putting Joe Biden in a bind. No, it's not. Biden has been very clear, going to let collective bargaining work its way. Now, he came out, gave a little spiel today, said, look, nobody wants a strike. Nobody wants this to happen. But here's the thing. Here's the punchline. Here's the money shot. Here's the thing you put on your bumper sticker. And this should have been the headline across every newspaper and every news feed. Record profits mean a record contract. See, that's how we should be thinking. This industry, record profits. Do you know who should share in that wealth? Do you know who should share in the wealth that their labor creates? That's right, the workers. And that's what President Biden said. He's like, look, they deserve a fair share. And he's going to, at this moment, step back and let it play out. He said workers deserve a fair share. The companies have made some significant offers, but I believe it should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts. And what does that mean? That means what we used to believe in this country. You work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. Now, what I find interesting is I heard, the broadcasts today, Ford saying, if we gave them what they wanted, it'd put us out of business. They're greedy. I've heard all of it. I've heard it all. Here's the thing. The money's there. There's a lot of money there. Enormous amount of money. You get the CEO of GM, this Mary Barra. Now Mary makes a tidy little sum of $29 million a year. She makes almost $2.5 million a month. She makes $557,000 a week. She makes over $111,000 a day. So she should not be talking about greed, and she should not be talking about, well, we can't afford it. Now she says, according to her, she gets paid on how well the company does, which is true. But so do the workers. Because here's the thing, when the company does poorly, what do Mary Barra and the rest of her CEO suite shills do? What do? They come back with their hand begging for concessions. And we're in this moment right now because all of these workers have given massive concessions over the last 10, 15 years. Enormous concessions. These auto worker jobs used to be the gold standard of employment in this country. Not just this country, on the planet. These used to be the working class jobs that people fought over. They never struggled to find workers. Now, after years of stagnant wages, after years of destroying benefits, after years of destroying working conditions, after years of pushing for temp employees, the workers have finally had enough. And are we surprised? No, we're not surprised. But this frame that the corporate-controlled media and the Mary Barras of the world keep pushing is, well, the CEOs, who make a ton of money, they do well when the company does well. Well, then that should apply to the workers as well. They should do well when the company does well as well. Because like I said, when things go south, where's the first place the Mary Barras of the world come? That's right. They lay people off. They close plants. They move overseas. They do all of these cost-cutting, ending redundancy kind of things, to fatten the bottom line. So what? So they can fatten their paycheck. And look, she's not alone. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, in 2021 made over $22 million, a compensation rate of 356 to 1 with his employees. The Stellantis CEO made over $25 million. These people are not hurting, but yet that assembly line worker making 17, 18 bucks an hour, that's too much. There's something wrong here, folks. There's something wrong, and good on the UAW for standing up in this moment and saying, look, we're going to change things. We're going to ensure that workers get a fair shot. Now, you listen to what Biden had to say. Biden said, let me be clear. No one wants a strike. Say it again. No one wants a strike. But I respect the workers' right to use their options in the collective bargaining system, and I understand the workers' frustrations. Biden's supportive. Most pro-union president in my lifetime. Donald Trump, on the other hand, Donald Trump gave his little interview and said he was asked, which side are you on? He goes, well, I just want to make America great. I just want to make America great. And then sought out to attack the UAW. But I'm neutral, but I'm going to attack them because they didn't endorse him. And in fact, the president, Sean Fain, said, another Trump presidency would be a disaster, which, Trump then took a problem with. But he went on to say that the auto workers are being sold down the river by the leadership. Now, here's the weird thing. This is the really bizarre thing, because this leadership right now was the first elected, directly elected, one member, one vote, directly elected by the members. They are literally doing exactly what the members want, which is why this is going the way it's going, because the members aren't going to settle for status quo. Now, I've heard, the auto industry, they offered a record 20%. Their executives took 40 over the last couple of years. The money is there. It's just a matter of, what are your priorities? Is it paying your workers? Is it investing in your people? Is it sharing the wealth that their labor creates? Or is it doing what Stellantis did? We're going to have $500 million in stock buybacks, which, if you've listened to this show longer than 15 minutes, you know that I am angry anytime I hear a corporation engaging in stock buybacks, because what it says is you have no productive use for the profits that you're making other than jacking up your share price to enrich your CEOs and your shareholders. That's money that could be invested in new equipment, better training for workers, better wages, better benefits, all kinds of things. But the choice by corporate America, the choice by corporate globe, is enrich thyself over their workers. So I got lots to get to today. This is just one of those, good on these workers. We are going to stand with them. We're going to try and get folks to come on the program and tell us what's going on the picket lines, and we'll get to some of that. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So for the last couple of days, we've been talking about this CEO, this Tim Gurner. And, he got himself into a little twist, basically saying that, those workers are lazy. They've gotten used to not doing any work and getting paid more than they're worth. And he said, look, we need mass unemployment. We need to make those people desperate again so they'll go back to work. And, he came out a couple of days later after taking some pretty heavy abuse because, oops, shouldn't have said that out loud. And I'm sure it took a verbal lashing from his fellow country club folk. But he did. He came out and he did the mea culpa. I'm sorry. I should have. I have empathy. He tried. He got the crisis management team together. They did something. And I gave him credit for that. I said, he called me because I want to hear it in person, but he tried. So today, I see Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore released an apology video, which I got to tell you, I could not get all the way through. The first two, it's a 4.5-minute video of her, doing this kind of whiny, kind of woe is poor me. I make the decision, Now, understand. She is choosing to put herself in the middle of all this. She has chosen to resume production of her show while her writers and folks are fighting to get a fair contract. She is undermining their power. And she's going to scab. Understand, this video was not, oh, I'm so sorry, I learned my lesson, I won't scab. No, she's going to continue to scab. She's going to be the scab that she is. But she wants you to know she feels bad, a little weepy. And I like what Bradley Whitford pointed out, because much more eloquent than I am. He said Drew Barrymore would like you to know that undermining union solidarity at the most crucial moment in Hollywood labor history makes her the victim. This has been like a super tough week for her. And my take on it was, this is a giant FU to working people. Sorry, Drew, you're right. It's not okay to be a scab. Don't be a scab. That was my take. I like Bradley's a little bit better because she tries to put herself in the victim role. And this is where, as a society, we need to hold people like Drew accountable. Now, look, she's worth, $140 million, $120 million, some obscene amount that she could easily take a couple of days off. It's not going to hurt her to miss a couple of days of work. Now, her writers, on the other hand, the people who put the words into her mouth, and look, not an easy job writing for Drew Barrymore, who can't seem to pronounce the letter S. So imagine trying to write monologues for someone who can't say the S sound. Maybe stop agging. Stop scabbing. Writers don't need an apology. They need you to stop. But this is one of these things where, as a society, we need to hold people like this accountable. And I go back to, and I've told this story a number of times before. When I moved in with my grandparents, there was a guy, catty corner from my grandparents' house, that nobody ever visited their house. I never saw anyone go there outside of the core family members. And when I moved in, my grandfather said, "Don't you ever go over there. I will beat you senseless." And okay. I was 13. What did I know? Okay, I won't. There's a beating I don't need. About 10 years later, I decided to ask. I go, what was that all about? Because it didn't make any sense to me. The guy had passed, and, it just seemed like the right time. And turns out this person had crossed a railroad picket like 40 years earlier. And it wasn't just my grandfather who held that against this guy, because you don't scab, especially that generation. They were the ones who fought the bloody battles on the picket lines. These are the people who met the business ends of the billy clubs and the thugs coming out in the night and beating people up. These are the people who fought and bled and died so that you could get the things that we take for granted. So that when someone crossed a picket line, and someone was a scab in those days, that was like the scarlet letter. You were marked with that forever. And we need to go back to that. We need to hold the Drew Barrymores, the Bill Maher's. We need to hold the View, the freaking View. And I don't care how you spin it. I don't care how you justify it. I don't care how you rationalize it in your little pea brains. It's harmful. And people need to hold them accountable. I will never watch The View again. I mean, that's it. Or I can't say I'll never watch the Drew Barrymore show, because I never watched it before, because I didn't know it existed. But I do now. And this is one of these moments where I'm again angered. Because as a society, we have to make choices. And this is really one of those which side are you on kind of moments. Are you on the side of the well-to-do and the folks who, your little labor strife, that's not our concern. We're above that pettiness. And we need to understand as a society that these people who are walking a picket line, they're not just doing it for themselves. Now, they're doing it for themselves. They want better wages. They want better hours, better conditions. They want better opportunities. Absolutely, without question, that is true. But there's a trickle-down effect here to where as their conditions increase, as their conditions get better, they bring people up with, this is that rising tide lifting all boats. When we had a strong unionized auto sector across the board, these jobs paid incredible wages, and everybody that had anything to do with that industry did well too. The trucking industry did incredibly well because the auto industry raised wages. And I think back to my grandfather, who, when he started in his work life, now this is pre-minimum wage, was making $17 an hour, 17 bucks. What am I talking about? 17 cents an hour, shoveling coal off the back of a coal truck. There was no union back then for him. There was no fighting with the boss. You were at will. And if you didn't shovel enough coal fast enough, you were fired. You didn't get the 17 cents for that day. And he cheated you out of wages half the time anyway. And in his lifetime, through his sacrifice, his going on strike every couple of years, his preparing for that and going out and literally fighting in the streets, so that his kids and grandkids could have a better life. It's a remarkable story. And it's a lot of our grandparents' generation. And we're in this situation right now where Sean Fain is right. This is this generation's moment. This is the defining moment of this time. And the cause is righteous. Because there's no justification for the auto industry to say, no, sorry, we're broke. Because they're not. They've made a couple $100 billion in profits. The question is, how long will this last? And will this get the kind of support that it needs from average, everyday working people, people like you and me? I want to get out to one of the picket lines because this is that moment where we adopt a striker. This is that moment where we walk in their shoes for a day, where we help keep food on their table to get them through this. Because at the other side of this is the model, this is the mold that moves us all forward. So I got to tell you, I'm hopeful and good on these folks for stepping up, and we'll see where this takes us. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. I want to hear it. Also, if you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1970. That was the day 350,000 GM workers kicked off a 67-day strike. It was the largest auto strike since the end of World War II. According to historian Jefferson Cowie, it was likely the costliest. In his book, Staying Alive, Cowie notes that the strike cost GM $1 billion in profits and nearly bankrupted the union. But he adds it, quote, lacked the proletarian drama that fired journalists' hearts. For Cowie, it was an example of labor management cooperation, a civilized affair. But historian Jeremy Breacher points out that the Wall Street Journal drew different conclusions about the strike at the time. In a series of articles, the paper noted that labor management cooperation during the strike served ironically to get workers back to work. A long and costly strike served a number of functions. It wore down strikers' expectations. After 8 or 10 weeks, workers would be amiable to terms they initially rejected. It also provided an escape valve for built-up frustration over working conditions. And a long strike served to coalesce internal union factions around a common enemy, strengthening the union's leadership in the process. For management, a long and costly strike lent hope that workers would be reluctant to strike in the future. But Breacher notes these ideas about workers' motives nearly backfired. Strikers simply wouldn't budge on their demands. They made gains in wages, pensions, and cost of living allowances. And they were finally able to retire after 30 years. But critics argued the agreement fell short of initial demands, and workers lacked more say in the workplace. This would be a key issue in the many strikes and wildcats in the years to come. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
Last week, I talked about how Labor Day was created in the 1880s by rebellious workers. But I'm celebrating the spirit again this week because a momentous new energy has been building in today's union movement. Indeed, renewed union rebelliousness has put labor back in Labor Day. Previously cast as a day off, it's now a day on, rallying working-class activism and celebrating nationwide strikes by such disparate groups as Teamsters and Hollywood actors. This is making the corporate bosses very antsy, for it's the harbinger of a new order that is undermining absolutist boss rule. Particularly alarming to the plutocratic establishment is the new aggressiveness of the United Auto Workers Union under their recently elected grassroots president, Sean Fain. Tossing aside the old willingness to accept incremental changes in contract negotiations, Fain began the current bargaining round by literally throwing the industry's proposal in the wastebasket, bluntly declaring that's where it belongs. Such honesty has spooked Detroit's auto barons, who are wailing that the workers' demands are, quote, excessive. This from pampered CEOs, each pocketing between $20 and $34 million a year in personal pay. Pathetically, the corporate establishment has no better retort to feign than to try its tired old Red Scare bugaboo. This man studied Trotsky, squealed one squeamish corporatist on TV. No, instead, Sean Fain has clearly studied Walter Reuther, Mother Jones, Fighting Bob La Follette, Frederick Douglass, Cesar Chavez, and other American champions of economic fairness and social justice. This is Jim Hightower saying, the big story here is not that a president of one workers' organization is shaking things up, but that organized workers themselves are on the move, demanding economic democracy.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here we go again. School district in southern New Jersey, the Deptford School District. Evidently, they're cracking down on those deadbeat kids. Evidently, the school has some unpaid meal plans, so they're going to do what a good conservative, God-fearing Christian person would do. No, they're not going to feed the children. No, that's not going to happen. No, they're actually, what the plan is because, they have kids who have run up debts, they're now going to either give them, there's a new policy, going to serve them peanut butter or cheese sandwiches. That's what you're going to get for lunch. Sorry, kids, we're not going to let you go hungry, but you're not getting the good stuff, or whatever that is. We're going to give you something out of a special line so that we can then humiliate you as well. And look, as someone who remembers vividly, having to go to the free line when I was a kid and get the special lunch, this particularly hits a spot for me. Particularly sends me off the deep end, because you don't do this to children. It's not their fault that their parents are struggling. It's not their fault that they were born into poverty. It's not. And stop trying to blame them. This is evil. And what kind of monsters would do this? What kind of horrible human beings would do this? Oh, yeah, I know. Conservatives. Because, again, this week, we saw the Census Bureau numbers just came out. And thank you to all of the Republicans and Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Childhood poverty more than doubled. And, we didn't even offer them cheese sandwiches. Not even the government cheese sandwiches. And this is one of those things that's just infuriating to me. Because, again, and I hate saying, I hate sounding like a broken record. I hate going over this and over this and over this. But it bears repeating. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the planet at its wealthiest moment, and we're letting kids go hungry, and we're humiliating them in the process just because their parents can't pay. Now, this is a policy thing. These are policy choices. So let me ask, because I got to know, are you okay with this? Is this something, as a citizen of this country, as a taxpayer in this country, are you okay with the fact that as a matter of choice, we're choosing to have more hungry children? And that a school district who's supposed to be teaching it's just plain evil to me. What kind of monsters would do this? Oh yeah, I know which kind. The kind that want our kids, these kids, the poor kids, to get back into the workplace. And because if they're hungry, they're going to work harder, right? So that they, if they don't want cheese sandwiches, maybe they're going to want a little bologna on that bread. And so they'll go to work. Now, what's interesting is our friend Jordan Barab over at Confined Spaces. He did a mock-up on, remember the kid, it was in Wisconsin who got killed at the sawmill, and he kind of mocks this, going, the headline was Sawmill where Wisconsin teen died in freak accident, ordered to pay $190,000 fine. It wasn't a freak accident. Sorry, not a freak accident. When you're not taught to turn the machine off, everyone who's worked around dangerous machinery knows lockout, tagout. Everyone gets that, because you're supposed to know the procedures of shutting things down so that you don't put yourself into, a position that you get sucked into the machine and killed. And that's where this is. I mean, this kid got pinned in this machine. It took 17 minutes for anyone to realize that he had gotten pinned. And, well, by then, too late. So when I saw the fine, is $190,000, is that what a 16-year-old's life is worth? Now, again, as Jordan points out, it's not the media's fault that this kid got killed. But it is their fault that they minimize this all the time. These headlines, it was a freak accident. No, not a freak accident. This was something that could have been avoided, should have been avoided. We've got rules in place. We've got laws for this. A 16-year-old shouldn't even been doing the job. How come we don't focus enough on that? How come we don't focus enough on what's happening in this country to our children? Again, the people who tell us that they love the children and they want more of them born are doing, well, this kind of stuff. Now, look, I'm not against kids working. My kids have always had some kind of employment, whether it's, me creating something for them or them working in a place where they learn to get to work on time. They learn to be, good, conscientious employees. They learn to have money and what to do with it. We've set up, IRAs for them. We've done all these things over the years to help them learn how to earn, use, and save money. Important lessons. But this idea that we're going to be putting kids back into dangerous jobs, I'm sorry, I'm not there. Because I know our history. I know where we've come from. When we were on our Working Class Heroes radio tour, we went down into a coal mine up in Lackawanna County here in Pennsylvania. And you go down, 300 feet down into the earth, into this dark, damp, horrible environment. And I'll never forget it. This woman was standing behind me. And the guy who was giving the tour was telling us the conditions. He said, imagine, he turned the lamp down a little bit. He goes, this was the light that would have been here. And imagine you're a 6, 7-year-old kid. Your job is to stand by this door. You're a 10, 11-year-old kid. Your job is to walk the mules through this knee-deep muck of feces and coal ash and animal excrement and all of this stuff. And this is the condition. And the rocks are sharp and you get cut all the time. And the woman behind me goes, well, where was OSHA? And everyone just kind of stopped, and this was pre-OSHA. Way pre-OSHA. This was, if you're desperate enough, hungry enough to work in these deplorable conditions, if you were exploitable enough, that's where you went. And I swear there are people who want to take us back to those days. And when I see stories like these, it infuriates me. Let's go to the phones. I got Julie on line 1 from Minnesota. Julie, how are you?
Hi. Say, how you doing? The last time we had a Republican governor in this state was about 20 years ago. It was Tim Pawlenty. And he messed things up. He got us $6 billion in debt. And I'll tell you something, 20 years ago, $6 billion in debt, that was real money back then.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah. We had Mark Dayton, Democrat, for 8 years. He helped drag us up out of debt. Now, this past year, we had approximately $18 billion to the surplus with a wonderful governor, Mr. Walsh. And one thing that really heartens me, Rick, is that we are starting in Minnesota. Every 3- and 4-year-old is going to get free daycare, free preschool. And every kid rich or poor, is going to get the free lunch, and they're not going to have different colored tickets, one for the poor kids so they're humiliated and one for the other kids. No, it's all going to be the same. We've got a real hunger problem in this country. We have a wealthy suburb. It's Oakdale. And before the pandemic, they saw 400 families a week. Now they're seeing 4,000.
Wow.
And this is in one of the upper crust suburbs. I'll tell you what happened last April. The COVID money ran out, and so they slashed the food support. They slashed food stamps or SNAP benefits by a third. And that really affected people. And it was kind of a dumb move because it just shoved all millions and millions of people more to the food shelves. And so it's too bad that our Republican friends are so desperate to cut food support for children. You know, we'll go along with you Democrats on some issues, but we insist that you cut that food support, because those people, all they're going to do is buy cookies for their kids or some crazy thing. You know, there's still a hunger problem. My church last Sunday, the social worker at an elementary school, you know, she wanted some snack packs for some of the kids, and so we did that after church. We made up the snack packs. But you know, that really irks me, Rick, that we got to have hungry people in this country, and I really don't know why.
I think George Carlin had the best line on this one. You know, he said, you know, you got the rich people who take all the money, do none of the work. The middle class pays all the taxes, does all the work, and the poor is left around to keep the middle class showing up to those crappy jobs. To me, that's probably the best explanation I've heard.
That's a good one. Well, we got to keep our chin up, and we got to keep soldiering on and be positive, and we got to keep trying. I'm kind of relieved to see that we kind of barely have a trifecta with the House and the Senate and the governorship, but things are really looking up in my state, yes. And I hope it goes around the country that way, Rick.
No, look, what's going on in Minnesota, fantastic. You know, the Minnesota Miracle is amazing. What's going on in Michigan, I'm thrilled with. If Democrats could just look at those two states nationally and go, this is what we're going to do for the country, I would be thrilled.
Thanks for taking my call, Rick.
Anytime, Julie. I appreciate it. Thanks. You know, that's the reality. I mean, you look at what they're doing in Minnesota. You look at what they're doing in Michigan. You look at what Democrats are trying to push in Wisconsin. You know, restoring labor rights and getting local control back. This is Democrats finally finding a spine, and that makes me happy because for far too long they've been a little squishy. Now, look, you know, I know, well, you're beating up on Democrats again. Yeah, I beat up on Democrats more than I beat up on Republicans because truth of the matter is I don't expect Republicans to do anything positive. I don't expect anything from them. I know they hate me. I know they hate working people. Democrats should know better. That's my view. Now, it's interesting. She said, you know, they're afraid that they're going to buy cookies or something. There was some right-wing idiot who went and got food stamps and then went to like a convenience store and bought all kinds of, you know, bought like $98 worth of candy, you know, just so he could have this, you know, this viral talking point moment. And the reality is families don't do that. The studies are very clear. Nobody does that except some idiot trying to prove a point. What people do with that money is they try to feed their families. And sadly, what they end up with is feeding their families on some of the worst food possible, the stuff that's cheap and filling. And this is, for me, again, one of these moments where we should be promoting more generous food benefits because it's good for families, it's good for communities, it's good for the very wealthy. But we should be moving in a direction to where we ensure that at least our children don't go hungry. Don't you think? I mean, I'm curious your thoughts because I really want someone to tell me, no, Rick, we shouldn't be feeding the children. No, we shouldn't be helping families put food on the table. No, you're just making them lazy. You're just making them dependent. I want to hear someone justify that. Maybe Alice has got a response. Alice, what's on your mind?
Well, what I wanted to say is this. the Republicans are always claiming what great, wonderful, patriotic Christians that they are, and how we're such a Christian nation, and should be following that big old book of myths, also known as the Bible. But they don't want to do anything. I mean, it's, good Lord, it says right in the New Testament, Jesus is talking about feeding the poor and taking care of the widows and suffer the little children to come on to me, and the whole 9 yards. And the only thing we can get out of the Republicans and the evangelical bunch is, oh, no, you cannot take birth control and you cannot have an abortion. And then after that, they really don't care what happens to anybody. It's pathetic.
Yeah. No, this is shown. I mean, it's shown since they overturned Roe. It's really shown, what kind of lack of moral virtue these folks really have.
Exactly. And then, I'm reading in the Washington Post, where, they're going on and on about, the Republicans did this, and, oh, my goodness, Joe Biden's so bad, and, just pushing the propaganda and stuff. And then, on the other hand, they're saying, oh, dear me, so many children were accidentally thrown off of their health insurance by the state. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are you people doing? Excuse the language. What are you people doing that you can't figure out that people need health insurance, and that what really bothers me, Rick, is, and I really hate this, is they're going around saying how morally superior they are to everyone in the world, how they're so much better. And then, but the only thing that they're doing is controlling things. Oh, no, you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. But they're not doing anything to help anyone other than themselves, the religion, and the freaking millionaires and billionaires.
You are not wrong, Alice. I appreciate the thoughts. Thank you. Here's the thing, and this is, since we brought up the pro-birth crowd, I would have respect for the anti-abortion folks. I would have respect for them if when Roe was overturned, because I was expecting this. I was, there was part of me that understands that there's a wing of that movement that understands business better than anyone. They understand how to get into the government coffers and get their snouts trough deep in it. I really thought the red states were going to start pushing for more generous social programs. We want to bring children to the world, and I really thought that there would be, some of it, on that faith-based initiative model, so that you would get government money into these faith-based organizations, that then they could then dole out the deserving, because that's what this really is about. It's about the deserving and then the undeserving. And I really thought that this would happen, that, state houses across the country, we would start to see some kind of movement towards social programs. That hasn't happened at all. And I'm literally shocked by it, because look, there's a lot of money to be made by administering these programs. There really would be. But they don't even have that level of value. I mean, it's quite remarkable if you stop and think about it. Because I thought, hey, we're going to set up food banks at the local church, and we'll get, or whatever, and it didn't happen. And it's still not happening. There's no legislation in any of these red states to deal with all of the babies that they're mandating being born. So they're just making our poverty problems even worse. I know. The churches will take care of it. That's what I've heard that repeatedly. Problem is, ain't working. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that came to be known as the Invergordon Mutiny in Scotland. The global depression had begun to sweep across Europe. In response to the economic crisis, the British government began cutting the pay of public sector workers. This included those in the armed forces. This came at a time when more workers were joining the armed forces because of the rising unemployment that ravaged the private sector. For those in the Navy, the proposed pay cuts were 10% for officers and as high as 25% for those under the rank of petty officer. As news of the pay cuts spread, sailors at Invergordon held meetings to discuss their response. Invergordon, Scotland had become an important harbor for the British fleet during World War I. The sailors decided to strike. On the day of the strike, several ships were scheduled to participate in exercises. But the sailors on 4 vessels refused to take their ships out of the harbor. Many men did not report for duty. Naval leaders gave in quickly, reducing the severity of the pay cuts. But many of the leaders of the strike faced reprisals. Some were jailed. Others were drummed out of the Navy. Spies for the Admiralty went below decks to monitor the sailors and report those who might cause future trouble. Government leaders tried to keep the news of the strike out of the news. But workers' rallies against public sector cuts spread to cities like Glasgow and London. The strike also caused a panic at the London Stock Exchange.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Gotta tell you, I love the Maganomics frame that the president has been using. And look, you gotta put. I guess you give credit where credit is due. Trump and the Republicans have done a masterful job of enriching the very wealthy in corporate America. They have. And you look at the only accomplishment they got through, which was Paul Ryan's baby. It did what it was supposed to do. It created an environment where the very well-to-do did very well. Now the weird thing is, I was having this conversation with someone today, and I said, you go back and you look at what the Trump tax cuts did, and it took a lot of the deductions that working people used to take, took them away. And I said that's a negative. It's a bad thing. It's harmful to working people. And he's, well, gas prices were $1 a gallon. And I'm going, no, gas prices were never $1 a gallon during the Trump years. Not even when they had nowhere to put the oil. No, that's not true. And this is the weird world that we live in, because when you try and talk to the red hats about the difference between what President Biden is actually trying to do in the direction that he is moving us as a country, and what they believe, again, the believe crowd, there's almost no reality base to it. And I think, at the end of the day, as I've been saying, the sane and rational amongst us have to get out and vote, and we have to get out and vote in large numbers. We have to pull other people along with us to go vote. And maybe there will be a moment where people, come around. But I'm not hopeful. Because look, there's still the economic folks who are looking at, the Reagan era as that was golden economic policy. The policies that got us into the mess that we're in right now. Understand, all of the deindustrialization that happened was accelerated during the Reagan years. All of the job losses that have happened over the last 40 years accelerated under the Reagan years. It was those policies, and it was the Reagan acolytes who then came after him, who said, no, we're gonna pursue all of these bad ideas for working people. Now understand, all of this stuff works exactly as it's supposed to. Supply side, trickle down voodoo Reaganomics is not a failure for the people at the top. It works exactly as it is supposed to. It is doing exactly what it was meant to do, and that is make the rich richer and the poor poorer. Doesn't get any easier to explain than that. So when the president starts talking about Bidenomics and the idea that we're going to grow an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, that freaks out. That freaks out the very well among us, which is why we keep hearing these stories of Joe Biden's too old, because that's all they've got. Joe Biden's old. Yeah, he is. He's old. And I'll be the first to say it. He's old. And he has a hard time getting sentences out. Absolutely. Yes, you won that debate. Congratulations. He's old and he struggles to speak because he's got a speech problem. Yep, 100%. But policy-wise, we can't talk about that because he's old. That's how these debates go. So for me, from this moment forward, I don't want to hear about him being old. I want to hear about what policies you don't like. Because, the other guy, the one on the other side, have you seen him? Have you seen the direction that he's going? He's old too, but you don't hear that very much, do you? Because our media seems to be picking favorites here. Or is it just, the unfavored incumbent? I'm not sure. But I'll tell you right now, Biden is doing all the things that need to be done. No matter what the Republicans throw at him, no matter what nonsense they dream up, he's doing a heck of a job. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back.
To 20,000 people could be dead in the wake of Monday's historic floods.
Monumental humanitarian crisis in Libya after catastrophic extreme flooding.
It is striking that we've already surpassed the annual record.
U.S. hits new record for billion-dollar weather disasters in a single year. Plus, Texas heat and drought causing widespread damage to local water systems.
All of that damage and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
No one is saying that climate isn't changing. What we are saying is the business model is a monumental grift.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about climate change, Greg Gutfeld, or Fox News?